Welcome back to Connected Teamwork Summit. We are about to dive into team defining moment number 3, goal setting, with our guest today, Erwin Visser. And I can say that in Dutch because one of the many things that Erwin is that he's Dutch by birth. And I'll start to appreciate just what I learned from Carson in the previous segment. Uh, I appreciate many things about you, Erwin, one of which is your deep honesty, and your commitment to making the absolute most of your life and making that example for your children as well. We've had previous conversations. Erwin Visser is senior leader at Microsoft and also a father to 5 children. He is an avid mountaineer who scaled many mountains, including Mount Rainier and recently Mount Everest. And we're going to hear about that. So, what a perfect person to talk to about goal setting. One of the things I learned from Erwin in previous podcasts is that something happens when we truly commit to realizing our potential. And we find with ourselves the wherewithal to scale what might have seemed insurmountable before. So, welcome, Erwin. How are you today?
Yeah, hey Hilke, thanks for having me here. It's always awesome to talk to you, and yeah, thanks for pulling this whole podcast together. Like it's, I was listening in the previous speaker, and it's really awesome to learn from other people around these areas.
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. I find it nourishing to feel like I'm in a big circle and I can hear from everybody some gifts like, oh, yeah, this is, helps you to feel taller on the inside. Sit up. So, we're going to talk about goal setting and connectedness. Erwin, starting off with a first question. What have you learned about connectedness and goal setting, intention setting in your life and leadership with teams?
Yeah, it's a big question, and it's a great question. And so I had in my career the opportunity for like launching a few new businesses in Microsoft or launching new products, and that's and goal setting is clearly something that is like super important because you want to set the right aspirational goal to your team, but you also have accountability to senior leadership. Yeah, because people are looking and watching what you're doing. And so my mental model that I have around goal setting is that at the first you have to really think about, hey, is this like a repetitive technical problem or initiative that we're launching? And we have a formula, and so we can execute the formula, and then it's you and I think everybody have heard of this. It's you set smart goals that are really like that are measurable, achievable, and you create that clarity in your organization. But in the world where we're living in, especially I would say, had the environment of Microsoft and IT, and it's always changing, and the market and like competitors are always changing. A lot of the challenges I would say are more adaptive, and are it's not that it's super clear what the journey will be and how you get there. And so in that case, it's I think one of the most important things is first of all that you create like a really good why, and
Mm.
that you make sure that there is purpose with the team and the initiative or the campaign or the launch, whatever it is, around what you want to achieve in the marketplace and why, and then align it to an aspirational goal, but
Yes.
set expectations that this is going to be a journey and will require patience because
Mm.
the route is not going to be 100% clear.
So adaptive versus a technical challenge, and I'm going to ask you in a little bit more about how that works in a team setting with goals at work. But I just have to dive in with you on Mount Everest. So that climb and that whole expedition, uh, was that for you more technical or an adaptive challenge?
Oh, adaptive, 100%.
Yes.
Yeah, hey, I like climbing mountains has been like I would say a casual passion for me. It's something that if I find time for it, and I would try to spend time on it. But also taking that I have a big family, as you pointed out, and a job. But Mount Everest was always a dream for me. As a kid, I grew up and I read the books and I watched the documentaries, but it was like and now I have experienced it. It is really hard to understand where you step into, um, and you kind of have to adapt continuously. It's really hard to, I think, for somebody that has not been on that altitude, feels the impact of like the lack of oxygen, to understand what it is to be at that altitude. And so you have to, it was continuously adapting yourself and setting the right expectations while staying optimistic and positive about your ability to do it.
Yes, yes, yes. So I want to take you to this moment where you decided that this is my goal. And I'm asking this because, humans and leaders and teams, we set so many goals. And some of them are memorable and some of them lift us up. Some of them are meaningful. And this to me strikes me as one of those life goals. Like very few people stand on the summit of that incredible mountain, like the highest point on this planet to stand on. So how did you decide to do this, Erwin? How did you get to this goal?
Yeah, it was a journey. It was a journey of, I'm one of those people that I always feel that learning and improving myself is super important for me as a motivation. It's like I'm a if you look at if I do any strength finder or exercise, like learner and like is always coming out as the number one. So I always want to see what's next for me. What can I do as a next step? And so I this was one where it was always in the back of my mind, but I never really saw the path to get there. Like it was, it's like what is like if somebody comes to you and say, "Hey, Hilke, do you want to fly to the moon?" You would say, "Yeah, maybe I would encourage that. I would think about that." But like, I don't even know. Should I call NASA? What is the what is my first step in this journey?
Right, right.
And so I was lucky that I met a few people that had done it, and that helped me to realize that there was a path for me. And for me, when I realized there was a path, it was almost like then I should make it a goal, because I would probably regret the rest of my life if I had an ability to do something like that and I would not have been jumping on it. And so so that was a really important reason for me to set the goal. And there were a number of other things, like trying to be a role model for my children. I think there's maybe also some negatives and maybe things that are maybe not as clean. Like there was probably some ego level things involved around at least proving to myself that I was able to do something like that. But I think the key reason was just that if you think you have the opportunity to take an adventure and a goal like that, I would have been regretting again my whole life if I would not have jumped on it.
Did you have any doubt after you made the decision to do it?
Yeah, continuously. Yeah, for sure. Because it's a significant investment in time, in financials, also in like energy, that you also take away from other things in your life. So it's not I wouldn't say it's not totally zero sum, but it's not a limitless opportunity either. So I had my doubts, but I also and this is where I think when we talk about goal setting, and also I'm now connecting it a little bit back to work. I sometimes feel that grit is an underestimated strength of people, but also in teams. And the ability to say, okay, we commit to this thing. We know it's going to be hard. There's going to be bumps. We know there's going to be bumps because there's going to be moments that we feel awful or that we are not achieving the results we expected. And then we have to go through this whole process of like understanding, explaining, getting insights. But hey, we are sticking to the goal that we have set. And so that was for me. When I was like, okay, I'm committed to do this, and I will see it through as hard without taking crazy risks. Of course,
Yes.
there's a safety issue here that you have to take into account.
Yes, yes. I will see it through. I will see it through. So, how do you create that kind of commitment to a goal, to an intention with the team, where there's that you kind of help to activate that grit? And maybe you can think a little bit about how you help activate that, and also what do you do when you don't see it? It's like, and I'm just
Yeah,
thinking about, in our corporate or in just any social setting. I'm guilty as charged. Like I'm in a group, I might be in a family group or whatever, and it's, oh, let's go here.
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, but so how do you activate that true grit? Because you need a lot of grit to get up to Mount Everest, and some of these goals that we set as teams are very challenging.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a few things here. Like, let me first talk about the positive, and then maybe some learning experiences I also had in my life. And the positive is that if you can really, if you can land an why, and create a purpose in your team as well, you will, and especially assuming that you have hired the right talent around you.
Yes.
Like that's kind of an underlying assumption here, is that you will really have, people will get passionate, and they will become self motivators to help achieve together what you want to, the goals of the initiative, of the project, whatever. The I think what I've learned is that purpose is really important, as I mentioned. I also think that if you have the right talent, again, is that let people figure out the how, and just set the vision, set the objective, but don't micromanage people. Like, because let them figure out the how, because if they figure out the how, they buy in themselves, and they believe, and they get them. Like, if you come up with and how, you buy in yourself against the success, because you want to also, like, you want to prove or demonstrate that your own contribution here. Make sure you create an inclusive environment, because again, it's in a lot of the environment, like the projects or initiatives that I've worked for, is that there was not like a single formula. It was not like straightforward. So you need to create like a learning team that experiments, that asks the right questions, and that continuously is on a journey to figure it out while you are trying to accomplish something in the market. And so that is, I think those are things that are really important, that you create that environment, have the right talent, and then it becomes almost like the grit develops as part of that process because of how people buy in.
I'm thinking about a particular experience maybe that you've had where you saw this play out. And we're going to take a break in a moment, a short break. Maybe after the break, you can share with us a little bit about maybe a particular experience that you've had, and tell us the story of that experience of a team that really came together around a goal by being inclusive, by figuring out the how themselves, being in it, and maybe also some of the things you had to tame in yourself to not get involved too much. I'm speaking for myself. That's one of my,
Yeah,
thinking about my previous work, one of my crocodiles, my tendencies that I need to keep an eye on.
yeah.
So I stumble over it. So we're going to take a little break, and then after the break, we'll hear from Erwin Visser, who's a senior leader in Microsoft and also a mountaineer of Mount Everest, to talk about how do we create grit for goal in a team. See you after the break.
Awesome.
So, how do you create grit for a goal in a team? Can you tell us an experience or a story?
Yeah, I have I think I will talk about two experiences. The first one, like a more positive one. So we worked on a very important product launch in the 2000, if I'm correct, in the 2008 timeframe, and just before we wanted to put everything in market, the economic crisis hit, as you remember. And I think it was in 2008, early 2009, if I remember correctly. And that completely blew up our plans because all investment money was pulled back because the cost was cut for obvious reasons. And so we had to come back as a team, come together as a team, and really do a rebuild in the shortest amount of time. The purpose was there because people were bought into the project. And so it's the fact that we were so under pressure from a time perspective and expectation, and had to come up with an approach that was based on significant less investment, but still trying to achieve the same impact. That's like it's kind of interesting because this is now 12 years ago. I'm still friends with most of the people in that team
Wow.
because you work in such a powerful moment where you really had like everybody's tested, everybody is under pressure, but also the fact that we were working together and made it happen at the end in a really positive way, it's created a super strong bond between the people on that project. And it's now, again, it's like 12, 13 years ago, no, 15 years ago, and it's still like a strong connection with all the individuals on that situation.
So Erwin, before you go on, in that team, right? Because now, hindsight's like, yes, that's happened, right? So we had this setback in 2008, and the team came together and regrouped. Was that an automatic, or what did you have to do as team and as leaders to get into that, as opposed to the other way, which you also could have gone like, oh, this is not working?
Yeah, I think that, and it's this is where I would say optimism and positive thinking is going to be very important. It's like, okay, things have changed. We need to kind of like go back to the whiteboard, but we are all committed to make it happen and get it done. And I also think is that these moments of like big change, and I maybe don't want to use the word stress, because stress, I think, is where arguably the pressure becomes too high and it becomes like a negative. But some amount of external pressure, it also helps for people to become real, because it kind of takes the layer off that we try to sometimes hide our own personalities, and so real personality starts to shine, which can be a real positive if you have the right environment where people can be themselves and really come together to solve a problem. By the way, Hilke, this is one of the reasons why I also like mountain climbing, or is that when you go through an experience with a group of people like Everest or any other mountain, is that after a few hours, people become real, because the environment it's so, like, I would say, so it's so challenging that you don't have the energy to try to be somebody else that you really are. And so it creates, I think, these strong connections because of that everybody is very, like, everybody becomes themselves, is transparent. And yeah, and some of those like ego things that you try to demonstrate to the world, they just fall off, and then you get back to your real self in those circumstances. Yeah, that I think was an important reason, and coming back to that project, why it was successful.
Yes. So I want to highlight this point of when you sign up for a goal together that really challenges you, it almost scrubs you of your mask, and the real you has to come to the surface. It's like, okay, all right, are you there? We got it. Like, what are we gonna do here? Like that,
Yes.
right? And all the ego strategic personalities about I have to be nice, I have to be competent, I have to do well, blah 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 blah, all goes to the background. So what we actually are comes to the foreground. So a question I have for you is, how do you create a goal together that people are actually into, right? So people signed up themselves to go to Mount Everest, I don't think you had much to do with that besides for yourself. But
Mhm.
at work, how do you create a goal that a team actually is willing to take the mask off for and be real for?
Yeah, it's a collective process. It's really a collective process where you, as in this case, in my role as potentially as a leader, you you set the purpose, you kind of like set some level of aspiration,
Mm,
but then you let collectively you work on the goals and the how,
mm,
and that creates the buy-in from a team where
mm,
people are really committed to achieve it.
mm, So that sense of creating the bigger why, the bigger, I'm thinking you said whiteboard, the bigger why board, and
Yeah.
then having people figure out themselves how we're going to contribute to this, what are the goals we will pick. We will
Yeah,
pick.
and it's a fascinating process. If you create like if you create that process in an inclusive way,
Hmm.
where people believe they can be themselves,
Mm,
they will volunteer for areas where they feel they have the strength and can contribute the best to the project.
mm,
So you immediately see that there are people that have certain strengths, could be in execution, could be in content development, could be in anything, is that they will start volunteering. And so the project team will really come together. And where people bring in their strengths
yes,
in
yes.
a very natural way if they are committed to the overall like objective or goal that you want to achieve. It's, a,
Beautiful.
it's I think creating that collective process and also an atmosphere in your team where people can be themselves, I
Mm,
think is super important. Setting the right culture. Culture is probably like the underlying culture of the team and organization is clearly like hugely important in these.
hugely important to create that sort of culture where people are feeling ready to take off the masks, be themselves, and contribute and create that bigger why. Create that bigger why. So, what would you say to a leader or a person who feels their goals are not as exciting, not as meaningful, or they just don't have goals that are like Mount Everest like, that are like taking and lifting them up? What would you say to them?
I I think you, as a leader, you need to become creative and thoughtful in how you set a goal.
Mm,
And I heard a great example even yesterday is that, and I think we all know John Deere. They are a tractor company,
right.
like they build tractors. But you know what their goal is? Their goal is to feed the world.
Uh,
And so you and not I'm not going to say that every project you can connect to feeding the world or curing a disease, but I think as a leader one of your roles is that you find a way to really talk about what you try to achieve beyond like sales goals or revenue goals. Like you
yes.
have to really like feel create a passion that is beyond just the counting of the beans.
Beautiful. So if we take that to Mount Everest, and we're getting towards the last few minutes of our conversation, what if you reflect back, what's the bigger why? Why was Mount Everest so important to you? What was the underlying purpose and goal for that in that for you?
Yeah, it's the easiest question to ask and the hardest to answer.
Yeah.
Uh, I honestly think I talked about seeing the path. I talked about uh, uh, want to be a role model. I also think that it's for me personally as a goal. It was probably closing the gap between the person I believed I was and the person I wanted to be.
Hmm. Closing the gap between the person that you felt you were and the person that you wanted to be. And what have you discovered now that you have summited? You're back down here, one piece, alive. What have you discovered?
Yeah, it's. I think for me maybe the most important discovery is that how much you can do as a human if you really put like really focus and put all your energy behind something. Because again, it's like the we if I and I'm although I had mountain climbing experience and I trained very hard, it was not that I was trying to do something without any like limitations. I had cancer twice in my life. I had some other areas of issues that I physically that I had while I was training and going through this process. And so it's kind of remarkable how much as a human you can achieve if you really create your own personal passion and focus around some like a goal like that.
It's amazing. I'm hearing from this conversation, from what you're saying, like it's quite a beautiful gift in the mind that we can have goals, that we can set goals, because they teach us something about ourselves. They lift us out of our limitation and into our potential more and more. It's really what I'm getting from you. This like set goals. So as I'm listening to you, and I invite the people listening to you as well, thinking about what are goals that you set and which goals are truly meaningful to you, and how did these goals lift you out of your maybe imagined limitations, and what's
Yeah,
possible on the other side of that.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm a strong believer, and we're moving a little bit more philosophical now. But hey, I'm a strong believer that that setting goals is personally for yourself is the only way to drive progress. And otherwise, it's at the but I also think there's an interesting trade-off. Is like making sure you keep present and enjoy smaller things on a daily basis. Because if you get too overly focused on some goals that you want to achieve, you don't want to lose the muscle of enjoying a sunset.
Beautiful. The power of presence. Thinking about what Carson said, the power of appreciation of what's here, while we play in the context of these goals, and we appreciate every step along the way. Erwin, I want to thank you so much for your presence with us today, and illuminating more about how goals can help us see more about what's possible within us and help to realize more of our potential, and how important it is. And I love your closing here, to stay present and to appreciate what's here. And I appreciate you, Erwin, for sharing openly and being such a role model for us to set goals that are worthwhile and are uplifting. Thank you so much. We've been with Erwin Visser today. Anything else you want to say by way of closing, Erwin?
No, hey, Hilko, as always, appreciated for this conversation. It's always I love your way of framing so many like complex issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Erwin. Thank you again, Erwin, and thank you for listening. Erwin Visser is a senior leader in Microsoft, also a mountaineer who recently stood on Mount Everest. We are in the Connected Teamwork Summit. We're going to take a short break for half an hour, and then we will continue our journey with listening to Matt Oppenheimer, the CEO of Remitly, and Vignesh Shetty, Senior Vice President at GE Healthcare, about getting to know each other and serving together. And also, we will demo the Connected Teamwork game, which at some point will become an app, all in the service, talking about the goals of making connectedness more of a core orientation in life and leadership. You've been listening to the first segment of the Connected Teamwork Summit. Enjoy a break and see you in about half an hour.